Hi, Keith Barrett here, founder and legal counsel of Vesta Settlements. In this video, we're going to talk about deed tenancies. So there are three basic tenancies in Virginia, and I'd just like to go through each one with you and discuss some basic features. Obviously, this will be important for people who are buying real property. And so the three basic tenancies in Virginia are tenancy by the entirety, joint tenants, and tenants in common. So we're just going to take each one of those individually. Let's start with tenancy by the entirety. This tenancy is reserved for married couples, so only a married couple can take property as tenants by the entirety. There are two important features to this tenancy. One, you have a tenants by the entirety with the right to survivorship. And the right to survivorship just means that if you have the two owners, a husband and a wife, and one of them dies, then by operation of law, the other one will have full title to the property. It happens automatically. The language is that the title drops like a rock to the other tenant. So obviously for married folks, that would be an important consideration. The other feature of tenants by the entirety, which is kind of unique, is that it provides some kind of simple, easy, basic asset protection. And here's how that works. When you hold title as tenants by the entirety, you're almost treated as a single unit, the husband and a wife, that is, so that if a judgment creditor gets a judgment against only one of them, let's say the husband gets a judgment against him, and that judgment creditor tries to file a lien against the property, it will essentially be ineffective. The lien will not attach. The only way that a judgment creditor can get a lien against the property for folks that are holding as tenants by the entirety is to get a judgment against both the husband and the wife. And so that's kind of a neat feature. In the classes that I teach, I kind of talk about how it almost creates a little force field around the property. And so that's kind of nice, and that is exclusive to tenants by the entirety. The next tenancy that we're going to talk about is joint tenants with rights of survivorship. So a joint tenancy with a right of survivorship would be owner A and B taking property as joint tenants, and we've kind of discussed the right of survivorship. And that means that if one of the tenants or one of the owners dies, then the other one will take full title to the property. The other feature of joint tenancy is that the tenants take title to the property in equal undivided shares, so that if you have two joint tenants, they will each own it 50-50. If you have three joint tenants, they will own it in thirds. If you have four joint tenants, they will own in quarters, and so on. So that's an important consideration, because under joint tenancy, you have equal undivided shares, and we'll talk a little bit about that after we get through with tenants in common. Tenants in common is kind of the default tenancy in Virginia. Tenants in common is different in a couple ways. One, there's no right to survivorship with a tenants in common, so that if you have owner A and B take title to property as tenants in common, and one of them dies, then their ownership or their portion of the property will pass by virtue of their will, let's say, or trust, or if they didn't have any type of estate planning in place, then by the laws of intestacy of the Commonwealth of Virginia, which essentially writes a will for you. So it does not automatically pass to the other tenant when you hold title as tenants in common. So that's important to know, because if you're taking title that way, then you're going to want to be sure that you have your estate affairs in order. The second thing about tenants in common is that you can identify in what proportion you hold title. So owners A and B can take title to property as tenants in common, and in the deed under which they take title, it can allocate proportionate ownership. So owner A can take title as to an 80% interest, owner B can take title as to a 20% interest, or any combination thereof. And if nothing is identified, then it's presumed to be 50-50. The other feature about tenants in common is it being the default tenancy, and as we relate back to, say, tenants by the entirety, where you have a married couple that goes through a divorce automatically severs a tenants by the entirety and puts the husband and the wife, or ex now husband and wife, in the position of tenants in common. And so the tenancy can change based on certain things like that. So the reason why it's important to understand tenancy is because I think a lot of times when buyers are coming in and they're buying property, there are certain things that are kind of on the forefront of their mind and certain things that are not. And I think maybe this is one of the issues that is maybe not what they're thinking about. And so the advice here is that particularly, you know, if it's a married couple, I think it's pretty much a foregone conclusion they're going to take title as tenants by the entirety. Generally, tenants in common, which have no right to survivorship, are reserved for folks that are, you know, maybe investors or things of that nature. It's that middle one, that joint tenants with the right to survivorship, where normally you're looking at either family members that are taking title that way, or individuals who are in some sort of you know, personal or romantic relationship but are not yet married, you know, young couples that maybe are engaged or getting engaged. And that's the one really where you need to think about these issues a little bit. It's not a decision that you necessarily want to be making at the settlement table. You know, we joke where there's a lot of witnesses around the table and they're all watching you make that decision. I think it's something you want to give some thought to beforehand, because obviously there can be ramifications to how that title is taken and what happens to that relationship after the fact and how the property gets divided up after the fact. These are important considerations. So there's just a quick little tutorial on deed tenancies in Virginia. Certainly hope that was helpful, and please watch out for our next video. If you have any questions on this, again, as always, you can feel free to contact us. You can find us at vestasettlements.com on the web. You can call us 703-288-3333. Thanks so much for watching.